Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Nancy Barnett, a senior consultant with the EHR Advisory Group, and I'm your presenter today. We will be covering some information concerning the merit-based incentive program, Advancing Care Information Performance category. The information presented here is based upon the final rule, which was released October 14th. The comment period remains open through December 19th. In today's webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. We'll talk first about the performance category overall. We'll talk about the weighting of this particular performance category in juxtaposition with the other categories. We'll talk about exemptions. We're going to talk a bit about the new measures. There's several new measures, and then we'll be taking a closer look at what are all the measures, which include many of the measures being done in meaningful use today. After that, we're going to go through how this performance category is scored. We'll talk about the scoring components, the steps to arrive at a score for the performance category, and then calculating how many points from the category actually end up being added into an eligible clinician's or group's final score. We're going to end the webinar mentioning a few decisions and strategies to begin thinking about now as you get ready for 2017. First, to place it in context within the quality payment program, we're talking about MIPS, the merit-based incentive payment system. An eligible clinician or group receives a final MIPS score, and that final score is made up of individual scores from 4 different performance categories. We are going to be focusing on the Advancing Care Information category and talking about how it contributes to the MIPS final score. Advancing Care Information, or ACI, replaces meaningful use beginning with performance year 2017, which governs payment adjustments in 2019. Most of the measures within Advancing Care Information are those already being met by those doing meaningful use. All of the measure exclusions for specific measures have been eliminated. However, there are only 5, and in 2017, only 4 truly required measures. Eligible clinicians are then encouraged to select among all the other optional measures those that best fit their practice. There are 3 new measures, all of which are optional in 2017. Here are the new measures. Patient-generated health data. This is where health data generated by the patient or from a non-clinical setting is incorporated into your EMR for at least one unique patient seen by the eligible clinician during the performance period. Request accept summary of care. Those who have been doing meaningful use are familiar with sending summary of care. This is the reverse. This is requesting one or retrieving one and incorporating the summary of care document that comes back into your EMR. The third new measure is clinical information reconciliation. This is actually an expansion of medication reconciliation, which we've been doing for some time. And again, the threshold is merely 1 transition of care or referral or new patient. The eligible clinician performs clinical information reconciliation, which now includes not only medication, but med allergies and current problem list. All 3 of these measures are optional in 2017. However, beginning in 2018, the second one here, request accept summary of care, will become a required component. For the MIPS final score, as I said, there are 4 different components that go into that final score. And each year, CMS will assign weightings to the different performance categories. In the 2019 payment year, the year that we'll be performing next year, the quality component will be 60%. For advancing care information, you'll see that it's 25%. Clinical practice improvement is 15%, and resource use is not going to be part of the formula for this first transition year. The weighting for advancing care information is expected to remain at 25% through at least 2019. However, over time, we can expect to see these percentages change. In fact, they will change. This one will remain constant for at least, probably through at least 2019, but CMS will eventually be adjusting weightings to meet their priorities. There are some exemptions to having to do the advancing care information performance category at all, and they're similar to the hardship exemptions available for meaningful use today. There are certain types of eligible clinicians who also may be given an exemption if there are insufficient applicable measures for them, possibly hospital-based clinicians, PAs, NPs, clinical nurse specialists, and certified registered nurse anesthetists. These last four categories of eligible clinicians are new to ACI. They did not have to do meaningful use. Consequently, CMS has indicated that they don't know whether there are sufficient applicable measures. They have said that those with insufficient measures just don't report ACI, and CMS intends to reweight the categories. Specifically, for those with an ACI exemption, for one reason or another, in 2019, for the 2019 payment year, and this can change over time, what they intend to do is if someone is unable to do ACI, the 25% that normally would be going into their MIPS final score for the weighting will be reallocated to the quality component. So for those that cannot do this performance category, 85% of their MIPS score will come from quality and 15% from clinical practice improvement activity in 2017. These weightings change over time, so other than it appears that ACI should remain at 25% for the next several years. An eligible clinician who is exempt may choose to submit anyway, and if they do choose so, they'll be scored like everyone else. CMS is going to look at the ACI submissions for eligible clinicians who are in those new categories, people who did not need to do MU before, as they consider exemptions for future years. So although it appears that those new eligible clinicians, the new types of eligible clinicians, may be able to get a pass on ACI in 2017, there is absolutely no guarantee that that will continue on into 2018 or beyond. This performance category, the scoring of it, before we go into the details of what you need to do, it's kind of important to understand the fundamental scoring components. I'm going to start down here with the base. The base is worth 50%. It is an all or nothing requirement. The base is required. You either meet it or you don't. If you do meet it, you get 50%. If you don't, you get 0. Not only for this base component, but for the entire advancing care information performance category. The second piece of this is performance, the performance component for advancing care information scoring. It's worth 90%. There are 9 measures, 3 of which are the same as the base measures down here, and there are 6 additional measures to choose among. There's a possibility of another 15% for bonus, and it's based on 2 specific activities. We're going to go into each of these in more detail, but you've undoubtedly noticed that if you add up the 50 the 90 and the 15%, it comes up to much more than 100%. It comes up to actually 155%. The highest score you can achieve for this category, it's capped at 100%. So anyone scoring at 100% or higher, their score for ACI will be 100%. Now let's look at each of these scoring components in more detail. The base measures, as I mentioned, this is an all or nothing component. And as such, you meet them all or you do not meet it. You get 0 for the entire category. However, there is one exception in this particular slide. You'll see the measures that are required. Security, risk analysis, you must be able to say yes to that measure. For e-prescribing, provide patient access and send a summary of care document. You must have a numerator of at least 1. This last item, request accept summary of care. This is a new measure that we reviewed earlier. And the threshold is, again, a numerator of at least 1. However, this particular measure requires the 2015 edition version of your certified technology. So you would need to do your EMR upgrade to the 2015 edition, which vendors don't even have available yet, in order to achieve this particular measure. So as a result, CMS wants to make it easy for everyone to participate in 2017. So they have created a transition option for 2017 only. And it's the same 4 measures, but they are removing the requirement for this one measure that requires the 2015 edition of your software. But again, just like the other one, you must meet all 4 of these measures in order to get credit for ACI. That will give you a 50% credit right off the bat. If you miss even one of them, you're going to get a 0 for all of advancing care information. So because of this, you no longer need to do the 2015 edition upgrade to your certified technology prior to your performance period or in your performance period. However, it's important to note that the 2015 edition will be required for your 2018 performance year. Now we're going to move on to the performance component of ACI. These are the measures that you may choose among. If you recall, there's a total of 90% available to achieve in this. If you did your base, you've already got 50. Even if you ignore the bonus possibilities, you could still get a full 100% score by achieving 50% across these. But let's talk about it in a bit more detail. Provide patient access, patient-specific education, view, download, transmit, secure messaging. The 3 red ones here, patient-generated healthcare, request accept summary of care, and clinical information reconciliation. These 3 are the ones that require your new software. Your current software cannot do this, and it will not count it, and you can get no score out of it for them. So in order to level the playing field, CMS wanted to ensure that eligible clinicians or groups who choose to use the transition measures because they don't have their 2015 edition up and running and ready to go yet, they wanted to make sure that they have the same scoring capability as those that are using the 2015 edition. So this is what they did. They took 2 specific measures and they raised the possible range of scores from 0 to 10% to 20%. They view, download, or transmit and send a summary of care are the 2 that apply. So if you're doing the transition one, you can ignore this column, and this is the column to use. So in that case, if you're using this, you cannot do the 3 that are asterisked in red here because they're not applicable, they're not available to you. And so what they've done to make up the additional 10%. This is 30% you're losing if you're doing these. What they did is they added, if you do the transition ones, you may also do medication reconciliation for up to 10%. These two increase of 10% and this 10% then evens the playing field. So now there's 90% available if you're using your 2015 edition or if you're using the transition measures. Eligible clinicians are encouraged to select among these performance measures the ones that best fit their practice. As I said, there's a conceivable 90% here. You only need 50 to get your top score, even without your bonuses. So there's no need to do them all. You need to pick and choose what you're going to do, and we'll talk about that a bit more when it comes to strategy and decision making and things to think about now. The last scoring component, the performance bonuses. There's a 5% bonus available for eligible clinicians or groups that report to one or more of these following registries. Syndromic surveillance, which as the last I checked was not available in upstate New York. Electronic case reporting, public health registry, and clinical data registry reporting. You noticed one of the performance measures was immunization reporting. It is not necessary to do that performance measure in order to qualify for this bonus. They stand alone. You may do the immunization registry reporting as part of your performance measures and get a 5% for this, but it's not necessary. If you don't do immunizations and you don't do the immunization registry reporting, you can still achieve this 5% bonus by reporting to one or more of these. There's a 10% bonus if an eligible clinician completes one or more clinical practice improvement activities using their certified technology. This is somewhat unusual in that, generally speaking, for MIPS, each of these four performance categories are very much standalone. They don't, you do your quality and you report your score, you do this, you report your score. This is a case where the activity in one can have an impact on the other. There are very specific activities for clinical practice improvement that can qualify for this 10% bonus if they are implemented using your certified technology. There is a list of qualifying activities being made available along with this webinar. These are the performance scoring steps. We'll just talk briefly about the process and then we'll walk through an example. First of all, we've already covered the base component. It's all or nothing. You either do them or you don't. You either do them and you get 50%, or if you don't do one of them, one or more, you get 0% for all of the advancing care information performance category, and there's no more scoring involved. So this assumes that you've met the base and have achieved your 50% for the base. In order to score the performance component, that's the one with all the measures, the basic process is that you calculate the score for each of the measures. And the way it works is that for each performance measure, with the exception of immunization reporting, you take the percentage score for the measure, which is found right on their scorecard from the EMR, and multiply the measure percentage by 10% for the standard measures, or up to 20% for a particular measure if in fact it's that case for transition measures. So you multiply it by the scoring component, and that's the overall percentage score for that particular measure. For immunization registry reporting, it's a yes-no. If you say yes, you get 10%, and it's a no if it's 0%. Or a no is 0%. Once you've calculated the score for each measure that you are reporting on, you don't need to do them all, as I mentioned earlier, the total performance score is the sum of each of the scores that were calculated in step one. Here is an example, and I have chosen to use the scoring factors for the transition year, in which case the scoring factor was increased to 20% for view, download, transmit, and send a summary of care, and the medication reconciliation was added. I decided this would be a better example, as I expect many, if not, well, certainly I would think most, will probably be reporting on transition year measures during 2017, as there's much to do from vendors and whatever to get ready with the 2015 edition. So patient access. I made up these numbers. So here's an example. The measure score right from the scorecard. Let's say for patient access, it's a pretty automatic position. They achieved a score of 95%. The scoring factor for that particular measure is 10%. We multiply the two and we come up with 9.5. The same thing, patient-specific education, 60%, scoring factor is 10%, 6. View, download, transmit, 30%. The scoring factor of 20, because these are transition scoring factors, would yield a 6. You do this for each one. I decided, I'm not doing some of these. And here is the overall score. You sum them all up of 51.5. So to calculate the score for the entire performance category, the entire advancing care information performance category, we have the base score of 50%, and using our example, the performance score of 51.5%, I decided to award us bonus points for doing a crossover clinical practice improvement activity and reporting to another registry, which, when I sum them up, comes to 116.5%. The possible range of scores is capped at 100%. So in this particular example, the eligible clinician would have received 100% for this. There's one more step to calculate how many points actually get added into the MIPS final score. And this is done by taking the total score for advancing care information, which in our example was 100%, and multiplying it by the category weighting. So if I take 100% times the 25%, I end up with the number of points, or 25 points, that will go into the MIPS final score for this particular clinician. Decisions to be made and things to begin planning for now for 2017. A big question for this particular category is when to migrate to the 2015 version of your certified technology. It will be required in 2018. So you're going to have to think about, when's your performance period? Are you doing a full year? Are you doing 90 days? Are you doing the test pace? And thinking about the timing. First of all, talking to your vendor to find out when do they anticipate the product being available and stable. You're certainly not going to want to be first. And thinking about what are the risks of migrating too soon. You'll also want to think about how to phase in PAs, NPs, clinical nurse specialists, and certified registered nurse anesthetists. What is it going to mean for them to participate in ACI? And how might you do that? They may be able to get a pass in 2017, but they may well not have one in the following years. The last item to think about right now is, which of the advancing care information performance measures do you want to focus on? There's a potential 90% there. You do not need to do them all. Which ones do you want to focus on to try to maximize your scores? Along with this webinar, we're making available an estimating spreadsheet to estimate ACI scores using current meaningful use performance data. In this score, it's a spreadsheet. And in the spreadsheet, you will see there are actually two estimators, one for transition measures and one for the going forward 2015 edition measures. And what you do, here's an example. All you do is take for your first clinician, you could put a name here. You put in, assume they're going to get the 50%. They must, or they're going to get 0 for everything. And then right from the current scores, is what we suggest, is right from your current scores from your meaningful use scorecards for this particular clinician, put in the percentages that you have numbers for. And then you can estimate the others if you so choose. You can also estimate the bonus activities. Will you be doing additional registry reporting or not? Or what about the improvement activity? Are you going to do it using the certified technology, one of those specific activities, in order to get the 10% bonus or not? Once you've entered in the percentages for all of these, the spreadsheet will calculate for you the total number of points that, given this scenario, this clinician would have added toward their MIPS final score. Thank you for attending today's webinar. If you have questions, please email them to John Nettie at jnettie@ehradvisorygroup.com and put in your subject MIPS webinar question. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.